What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our channel. I'm Grant.
And I'm Gabby.
And we are the G Team. This week we're going to be in a passage that's probably familiar to some of you guys. It's the story of the Madman of Gadara. He's a madman who Jesus comes upon and ends up casting out devils, and he is changed through a process that Jesus interacts with him. And people they know him as the person he was before, and then now they're seeing him as a different person. And we're just going to kind of take away a few main points from the whole story, the moral of the story, and just to give you guys a little bit of perspective. It's going to be in Mark 5, and it's through verses 20, but we didn't want to take the time to read all those verses because you guys can read those on your own. We'll mention the verses that our points are coming from, and you can make sure to look at those yourself and read them. We just didn't want to take up time by reading all the verses because we know these devotions are better if they're a little bit quicker. Don't take as much time out of your day, so you can just watch it. So whenever you get time, make sure to go back and look at the verses that we're mentioning for our points.
Yeah. So since we're not going to go ahead and read, it would be a good time to pause and go ahead and pray, because even if you aren't reading right now with us, you do need to always pray before you enter into the lesson, so that you are understanding everything and that praying that He will let you understand the information and get what you need to out of it. So that would be a good time to do that. Alright, so jumping right into point 1, this is covered in verses 2 through 7, and it's basically talking about who this man was. So his name was Legion, and he was basically a man possessed by a lot of demons, and he had a very unclean spirit. He was untamable is how they described him. And he would cut himself with stones. He would cry constantly because he was so possessed by these demons and had nothing to live for, basically. And one day, Jesus came and he saw him, and he ran to Jesus and was just overwhelmed by the comfort and asked him, "Will you please help me? I want these demons out of me. I just want to live a better life." And so that's what these verses are talking about, who he was and what that was like whenever he saw Jesus, and how just the sight of Jesus, he hadn't even talked to him yet, but just seeing him comforted him so much.
Yeah. And we go down to our second point, which if you look at verse 13, you see what actually happens and how the problem is solved. Jesus casts the demons out of this man and into a herd of swine, and they actually run themselves off a cliff into the water. And I think it speaks volumes that this man, just like Gabby just said, as soon as he saw Jesus, he clung to him. That was his only hope. And everyone knew this man. Everyone knew he was the man who sat up in the caves and cut himself with stones and would cry all the time, like Gabby said. People, it's not like he was out by himself and no one knew him, no one knew who he was. Around the town, people knew who he was. People were scared of him, which rightfully so. We would probably be scared if it was somebody we saw him cutting themselves and yelling and screaming. That's probably not somebody that we would typically want to hang out with. And so everybody was pretty scared of him. And then Jesus comes along, and I think it just shows one of the great characteristics of Jesus out of the many, many, many traits he has. But he was fearless, and he courageously just went to this man, and he knew that God was going to be able to work through the situation, which we end up seeing how God did work through the situation, and that kind of works into point 3.
Yeah, so point 3, after Jesus, took the unclean spirit out of him and cast it into the swine, people were seeing Legion just sitting there as a right man, sane and clothed and well beside Jesus, and they'd heard these stories, and they were terrified because of who he was. But it goes on to say, the last verse in verse 20, it wraps it up by saying about how Jesus told him, he said, "You need to go and tell the great things of what the Lord has done for you." Because people told Legion they didn't want him there because of who he used to be. They looked at his past only, and they weren't looking at who he is now, a sane man who is changed for so much better. They were terrified and didn't want him around their family or anywhere near where they lived. And he ran to Jesus and told him that they didn't want him. And he said, "No, you go home and you spread the word. Talk about all the great things that the Lord has done for you." Yeah. And the very last verse, last part of it says, "And all men did marvel."
Yeah, and I think it goes to show how change can scare people. Initially, like Gabby said, nobody wanted to see this man. I mean, they were still scared of him, and seeing him as a totally different person scared them even more. And change scares people. Change scares everyone. I mean, as humans, we like to cling to what we know and to what is a good, neutral area that we know is not going to give us any curveballs in life. And that's just something that we do as humans. But we have to realize that Jesus is constantly going through the Bible. Everywhere you see him work, he's changing some person, some situation. Something one way or another is being changed. And that's all throughout his life on earth, as we see in the Bible. And we have to realize that in our life as Christians, we need to change too. We constantly need to be changing to be better and to be better Christians every day. Because we're never going to be the best Christian that we can be. We can always strive to be better. And just like this man, he started out as someone who everyone was scared of. He was possessed. He was literally trying to cut himself and kill himself. I mean, he was a very, very mentally unstable person because he was possessed. And Jesus comes along, changes him, and then he goes and becomes a missionary, basically, telling people about what Jesus has done for him. And that's what we should do in each and every one of our lives. Everyone comes from a different background, a different situation. Fortunately for Gabby and I, we were both raised in church, and so we've always been in church. But for you, it might be different. You might not have been raised in church, and you might have lived a life that was not something you would want people to know about and something you're embarrassed about. But you can use that to your advantage to show people, look how Jesus changed me. Look how I went from a life of sin to now I live in Jesus and my worth is found in him. Yeah. Don't be afraid to embrace your past to show people just how great Jesus is.
Yeah. Alright guys, so that's all we have this week. I hope you guys enjoyed this devotion. And I'm sorry for no post last week. I had a really big test coming up that Monday and I just needed to really study for it. And there was a lot going on with my schooling and everything. So we just took a break and let me focus on that. But we really hope that you guys have enjoyed this, and pray for us. We'll pray for you. If you have any special prayer requests you'd like us to pray on, you can leave them down below, and maybe other people will pray on it too.
Like Gabby said, sorry for last week, and we're really getting to our busiest part of the year right now. We've got a lot going on at this time of year in the spring, so just make sure to pray for us. We still have all intentions of posting every single week. We're sorry for last week, but like I said, we have all intentions to post every week, but it's going to be really busy, so just pray for us that we can make sure to budget our time accordingly. That way we can have time to video it and edit and just pray about our devotions. So make sure to be praying for us, and we'll be praying for you guys. Once again, I'm Grant.
And I'm Gabby.
And we are the G Team.
And don't forget,
do your best and let God do the rest.